Ladies and gentlemen, we are here with Season 4, Episode 23, Inspiration Manifestation. The episode in which Rarity manages to find a cursed book that allows her to turn things into other things, like that. And she goes a little crazy with it. A little crazy. I mean, I thought most of the stuff looked pretty legit, but, you know, what the hell do I know? This episode was put forward by Corey Powell and Megan McCarthy, and is the best. No, okay. Let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Rarity crush. One of these days we're going to stop having rarity crushes. It's going to be a thing. Maybe it'll be when the show is over. I don't know at this point because it keeps being a thing. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes, trying to figure out where to start, because there's there's actually 3 messages for the show. Yes, but it is not this day. This day we fight! Yeah, Spike, I'll get to that in just a second. So let's start with the actual motif, the actual message of the episode is, you should be honest to your friends. Okay, sure. We'll cover that later because I feel it's the more diminished of the actual themes of the episode. Let's start with the first theme of the episode. Rarity puts together a puppet show. And Rarity destroys Brigwin. And in the destroyed Brigwin, we have the puppet show and this little thing. And it's very fancy and very pretty and doesn't work at all for the intended client. Now that Bragwin's a puppet show, we can see that, I mean, she's beautiful and amazing and wonderful, but she's not a good puppet show, right? We needed to make something that was going to be a good puppet show. This is actually a legitimately good lesson. And this is the kind of thing that absolutely applies even when you are an adult. If you're making something, you need to keep in mind who you're making it for and what you're making it for. I've run into this constantly doing graphics design work over the years, and audio design work over the years, and editing work over the years. Right? There's a lot of examples where you have to decide what the client wants, and because the client doesn't always tell you what they want. And then you have to show them an idea, and then they say, oh, well, that's not what I want. Well, what do you want? And then well, I have no idea what I want, and then they have to do... It's this whole thing. It's this back and forth thing. Anybody who's worked in any kind of service industry like this knows exactly what I'm talking about. I guess it's not service, it's craft. Anybody who's worked in a craft industry like that knows what I'm talking about. And yeah, sometimes they'll just be like, just make it 20% cooler, and it's just like... Nevertheless, there is a validity to that sort of thing. Because even though SA2K and Raskor are both bringing up Art of the Dress, the fact of the matter is what she made was completely not for the client or for the situation. It would be like if I just sat down and decided to make a dress that... Okay, dress is a bad example. I've got an example. Let's say... Because this I can actually use an example here. Hang on. Let's say someone walks up to me and says, I want a quiet piece... Well, no. I want a song. And I want a song for this scene that's going to be happening at night. Now, I could make a song like this. Or I could pull a Rarity and say, well, you know what would be a much better song? That's a bad example. Hang on. Give me a second. Let's say I decide, instead of that, to make a different song like... Oh, I know a good one. That's going to be too loud. Screw it. It's going to be a little loud. It's your audio warning. So let's say that... So I'm making this music for a night scene for a client, and so this is the song I come up with. Now you get my point, right? It's a good song. It's actually one of my favorite mixes of my own work. But it doesn't really work for what I'm writing it for. They wanted a song for a night scene. So what I should do is do something like what I had earlier. Something closer to this song. Right? That's what Rarity does here. This is why I say, like, this is almost assuredly an unintentional Aesop here, because this is actually a far more complex thing than it sounds. You can't just listen to the client and do exactly what they say. That goes badly. You can't do whatever you want regardless of the client. That goes badly. You have to kind of... You have to... There's kind of an in-between of figuring out and catering to and blah, 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 blah. And that's also true, Loner. But my point is, this is a good lesson to give. What she did was pretty wrong, overall speaking. As Larian pointed out, they've shown up before, and they've been like, hey, you know, this is a regular event. She should be aware of the fact that this regular event needs this puppet show from this guy, and blah, 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 blah. It's not like she can't do what he wants. She does design a perfectly functional, yet still visually attractive puppet show for him later. It's just, it's actually more designed for what he actually wants it to be. So it's not like it's impossible, and it's not like he's asking too much. I do have to say, though, the guy's a dick. I wanted to smack him one. But anyways, because, I mean, does he have to be such a dick about it? So that's the first unintentional Aesop. Now, that's an important one, because it's going to be the thread of most of the work, but let's move forward a little bit here. So, this then leads to the episode, the teaser ends with Spike saying, I don't know what his problem is, this thing is completely perfect. And it's like, but overpraising, that's actually the second unintentional Aesop of the episode. By the way, when it comes back from the break, the next thing he says is, I can't believe he didn't like the perfect puppet show, perfect puppet. You know, once again, overpraising it. By the way, does she just have ice cream there all up? She had 12 tubs of ice cream. Yes, I counted. 12 tubs of ice cream. I refuse to acknowledge the word simping. I feel like it's just very quickly becoming another insult word, so we're just going to throw that out the window. No, overpraising. Here's another good night song. Overpraising is actually something that is a legitimately good lesson that people should learn, especially adults. Let's say Baron comes to me with a story idea. And let's say that this story idea sucks. Now, I have a couple of options here. Actually, 3 options. Yeah, by the way, Tabitha St. Germain is amazing in this episode, as she always is. Option number 1 is I could say, hey, Baron, this is garbage. Don't do that. Option number 2, I can overpraise, just like Spike does. This is the most amazing thing you've ever made, Baron. I don't see why anyone could have a problem with this. Option 3 is what you should do, which is give actual criticism and feedback. I've actually talked about this topic a lot in real life, but especially on this show. I need to, if you just tell people lies, tell people what they want to hear, then they don't grow or change or improve. If someone doesn't know they're doing something wrong or doesn't know how they're doing it wrong, then they can't do it better. It's one of the reasons why that phrase shows promise is actually kind of an insult, but not insulting. Shows promise means it's bad, but you can see elements of how it could be made to be good. That's what shows promise actually means in terms of criticism. So, you know, I could look at something Baron puts together and says, well, this shows promise, and then I can actually start talking about a few specific things and try to give actual criticism and action. I feel like we talked about this very recently with the Crusaders and that theater play that she put together. You remember that? Yeah, exactly. Honest criticism is really, really important. Because all negative or all positive, both are deleterious to the whole process. They both make things worse. Also true, Raskor. Honest criticism is important. So now I'd say this is definitely an unintentional Aesop, because even though that is something that is shown throughout the course of this, well, frankly, they don't do a good job of presenting that idea, because the actual Aesop is, you should be honest with your friends. Which actually I kind of disagree with, but I'll get to that in a minute. Anyways, so those are the 2 unintentional Aesops and the more interesting ones of the episode. So this then leads to Spike finding a spiked book, and he loves it because it's covered in spikes, and then he pulls an I have no peripheral vision, God, I can't talk, as he just completely stumbles his way out of the death trap. Okay, I'll chalk that up to a Spike is dumb moment there. I do really like the idea of this thing, the way that this curse works. I'm going to call it a curse. That is presumption and headcanon. I don't know if it technically qualifies, but I'm going to presume it does. It's a transfiguration or transmutation, depending on how you want to think of it, and that's kind of it. But at the same time, perfect transmutation or transfiguration is insanely useful. That is god level tier of power. That is awesome. That is so useful. I don't mean literally god level. That's not what I mean. I'm just using that as a adjective, right? That's just, oh my god, I could turn this thing of carrots into, a thing of sushi. Just, oh my god, yes. It is effectively a remote replicator. Because that's what a replicator does in Star Trek. It breaks things down and then turns them into something else, which is insanity. So that's super, super useful. It's also, this is even more cool. It's only limited by your creativity. What you do with that depends entirely on how creative you are with using it. Someone who's not very creative or can't think of much will not come up with much. In that manner, it is almost exactly like a Green Lantern ring. Or most of the Lantern rings, really. How much creativity you have and what you can make with it definitely alters and changes how useful it's going to be to you, So anyways, all her magic is green now, continuing the Green Lantern parallel. And then Puppet Dude is a dick, already mentioned that. So there's this point where she's like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and give the book back, and Spike's like, okay, I'll go take it back. So question, would you give up the book if you had it? Now, obviously, that's not Rarity, and she's not giving up the book. But just assume for a moment there's no external curse, which I'll talk about later. Would you, if you were in your own right mind, willingly give up that book? To be perfectly blunt, I wouldn't. One thing? Absolutely, Raskor. So, yeah, no, I would completely hold on to the book. Are you freaking kidding me? If you offer me a Green Lantern ring, I'm probably going to hold on to it. Now, there is an extra variable here, and that's the thing, because Rarity does not get the choice to keep or get rid of the book, because Rarity's not here right now. That's important, and the latter end of the episode actually makes that clear. Rarity pieces out as soon as the curse takes hold. And again, I'm going to talk about that in a second. But that's why I kind of sideline this, isn't it? Hubris just means to challenge the gods, Raskor. So, sure, I'll take it. I'll accept that. I have hubris. Done. Still gonna keep it. If I didn't actually trust myself with power, I should shoot myself on the spot, because that's insanity. If you don't trust yourself with power, then you should never seek to do anything, because that's what power means. Power is the ability to do. And if you're going to decide, well, I don't trust the ability to do to yourself, then why are you even bothering with anything? This is something I've talked about a lot, which is why I'm kind of segueing into a Prime Directive discussion. If you have all of the technology and the resources and the power of a Federation starship, and you look at a dying people and say, sorry, I don't trust myself with the power to save you, then we have a problem here. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. I don't want to get into that discussion. Point being, yes, I would absolutely trust myself with a Green Lantern ring. Let me actually add an asterisk to that. Assuming I actually got one and it didn't turn into nightmare death immediately, then yeah, okay, now that I've proven that I have the willpower, because remember, Green Lantern ring is about willpower, not just creativity. I don't know if I have the willpower, right? Anyways, where the heck am I? So, at 11-minute mark, it starts to get a little bit creepy, and we start to see a little bit of very quick escalation here. Yeah, I'm okay with rewriting the universe. We need a new story anyways. Let's undo it all. In fairness, okay, if you really want to talk about the trusting yourself with power thing, Larian's statement is entirely correct. I would trust myself up to a certain point. Let me tell you something. This is a real thing, okay? I'm one of those really stupid geeks who likes to think about what, like as a creative exercise, what would I do if I had the power of the Q, right? If I had that level of universe rewriting. Most of that stuff's easy, right? Fixing the atmosphere, Easy. Cleaning the oceans? Easy. Restoring all the health to the soil? Easy. You know, most of the stuff that I would... most of the large sweeping changes are easy things to trust myself with, because I would have the power to have the knowledge to do it right, and then I would do it. Right? Yeah, it's when we get into the more complex things that it's like... hang on. And I'll give you a direct example. A judicial system. I have actually thought about this, and that's actually one of the lines for me. Is because I don't think I could come up with a fair and good judicial system. In fact, to be perfectly blunt, I don't think it exists. I don't think there is such a thing as a judicial... I know we're getting into polemic territory here, but I don't think it's possible to make a judicious system that human beings can use, you know, no magic, no nothing, that does not just fall into corruption over time. Now, I could be wrong about that. Maybe there is such a thing, but that is such a monumentally, horrifically complex topic that I would look at that and I would just hands off. So, that would be a line for me. I wouldn't trust myself there. I would not impose my absolute will upon the world in a judicial matter. To go back to that idea of what I do trust myself with and what I don't. If my sister gets sick with a terminal disease, it's easy to cure her. Removing all terminal diseases without any kind of internal infrastructure changes, that's a little more complex. Although the idea, I do actually agree with the growing mentality that eliminating death is actually more of a good thing than a bad, despite what science fiction has taught us. The problem is, I think the only way that that will actually work long term is if we as a species build up to it, right? It'll be a problem that we, as a society, I want to say synchronous, as a chunk of systems, you know, working together, need to figure out ways to solve those issues, right? We need to solve the issue of immortality, and that's a long-term, large-scale, multi-layered thing that would need to be done. I do think it's possible, but I would not just, nobody dies, because that's insanity. That's just that freaking, not Doctor Who. What's the name of that Doctor Who spinoff? I can't think of the name of it. We're getting way off topic here. Torchwood, thank you. It's just that Torchwood episode, Miracle Day. It's just Miracle Day at that point. And again, the whole problem with Miracle Day was they were completely unprepared for that, right? There was nothing in place to handle lack of death. And also, if we're being honest, Miracle Day's other problem was they kept rewriting how the not dying thing worked. Like, early on, they chop off someone's head and he's fine, and yet later on they can just, you know, fall from a large height and die. But anyways, I'm getting off topic. Again, way off topic. The point is that I would trust myself with that power. And the reason why is because I know where that line is. I would look at that line and say, nope. Not unless I really did my research and work on that, and worked with other... It's like that workshopping thing. I was talking about this earlier to Low Reloaded. As much as I would love to rewrite Trek, I wouldn't do it in a vacuum. I just don't think that way. I would get a committee, a group of people, and we'd sit together and we'd workshop how to do it, and similar concepts. Anyways, I'm getting way off topic. I should probably stop. So let's talk about My Little Pony. So she has the power to remake things. This power that we've been discussing here, although on a much more localized scale, but that is still the thing. This then leads to her... There's a quote here which I wrote down. I've created my fall line for the next 15 seasons. Yeah, that makes sense to me. What? I mean, I have 2 years of YouTube videos pre-recorded and already up on YouTube. If I died tomorrow, you guys will still get some YouTube videos. Not all of them, but some of them for the next 2 years. Right? I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. Get all that backload ready to go. Also, as Sean points out, and I was going to point this out too, but thank you for getting there as well, she can predict trends that well because she has her finger on the pulse of fashion that well, which makes sense. Again, she is very forward-thinking about that, and very creative. This then leads to escalation. This is when the escalation finally comes into the episode. You don't need to ask permission to change something for someone because people love surprises. See, that would be a line for me right there. Mostly. Okay. Now we escalate another step. You shouldn't tell them I'm behind it. This is when it becomes very obvious that this is not Rarity. This is an external entity that actually has an agenda that it's trying to push. It is trying, whatever it is, the curse. I'm just going to refer to it as the curse. The curse clearly has an agenda of trying to maintain its possession of Rarity and to keep going as long as possible. So it's using the connection to Spike in order to keep itself a secret. Now, there is a little bit of Rarity that peeks out every now and again. It's pretty obvious because every now and again her eyes change color, and that's almost you can almost always tell every time the real her is poking out. But yeah, this is very Death Knight-y. For those of you not aware of Warcraft lore, someone who is a... when you are made into an undead in Warcraft lore, if your soul is attached, you are you. If your soul is removed from the equation, you are not you. You have your memories, but your personality and your mindset are completely altered. You are no longer yourself. You are a completely segregated entity. Make sense? This is why Death Knight Arthas and Arthas are two separate people. So yeah, that's kind of the thing we've got going on here. Curse Rarity is a separate person, and the episode makes this very clear as we're going through this. This is when the things start to escalate. That's another good way to put it, Venetia. After, Spike starts to get a little bit off character. I agree with that completely. I don't care for Spike in this episode. I'm not even at the point which pisses me off most yet. She makes a dress for Rainbow, completely out of the blue and without permission, which she dislikes. She makes the giant birdhouse, which the bird is now lost within and no longer happy about. And this then leads to a concept, because every step of the way, Spike has been heaping praise upon Rarity. It's my opinion that this is actually part of the curse. Most curses follow rules magic, as I've talked about many times, and in this case, there seems to be two rules. Praise strengthens, and honest criticism ejects, right? We see both of these throughout the course of the episode, and she does escalate more and more and more, and do more and more and more, and get more and more out of control the more Spike praises her and lavishes that praise upon her. At several points, she literally stops and pauses, waiting for that attaboy, waiting for the pat on the back from Spike to give it to further emphasize this. Yeah, way to go, Spike. And of course, Aloysius is just sitting there staring, like, judgingly, which... Anyways, this, well, interestingly enough, does lead a little bit... Yeah, I know, right, Larian? This leads back to another issue with that first unintentional Aesop, making your work for the client. So there's a birthday party. This is actually probably a better example than the puppeteer thing earlier, because there's a birthday party for a bunch of little kids, and it's silly and fun and happy, and she's like, we should make it better. And so she makes it better for herself without consideration for the target audience. I'm sorry, I'm going to rewrite that. She makes it in a way that she would consider better, not for the target audience. There we go. That's how I want to phrase that. Because it is a nice party that she puts together. It's just she didn't take into account the client. Again. And Pinky's just like... because she has no idea what's going on with this one. Then she gives Spike an outfit which looks terrible. I thought Rarity was supposed to be able to make good outfits. This might be the worst outfit I've seen in the entirety of this show. And that includes the terrible galoshes dress that AJ put together. God. He's got the arm rings, which don't even match. And then he's got, like, random gems, which don't really form any kind of pattern. And this giant, terrible-looking helmet, which completely clashes with the rest of the work. Oh, my God. But yeah, I would agree, Raskor. I think by that point in time, I do think this is officially the point Rarity's creativity is no longer really involved here. And whatever's left of Rarity is gone. This is now officially just Curse Rarity. Because that looks terrible. A solid gold floor? Solid gold road? That's just gaudy. Rarity would point that out. Rarity likes fancy, shiny things, but a solid gold whatever is just gaudy, and she knows that. I'm almost positive she pointed that out at some point. So she wouldn't do that either. The only thing she makes after this point in time that's actually legitimately good-looking is the crystalline tree, which, honestly, I'm really into crystal stuff in general, so that just looks cool. But you know, whatever. But yeah, Rarity also knows restraint. She knows what gaudy means. Gaudy, generally speaking, I don't think the chariots look particularly good. I guess I'll give you the chariots. The gaudy is when you go too far. It's like, you know what? These gloves are good. I'm gonna wear 5 other pairs of gloves on top of them. Like, that's gaudy, right? That's how you define that. Just way too much. Anyways, meanwhile, yeah, gaudy's a pimp outfit. Meanwhile, Twilight runs around treating symptoms, not causes, of course. And this then leads to the intended Aesop of the episode. Of you want to tell someone you're close to something that's an uncomfortable truth, but you're afraid to do it because you don't want to lose your connection to them. This is part of the problem of the episode, in that it approaches what is actually a very complex topic as if it's a binary thing. The message of the episode is always be honest to your friends, which is a little bit too binary. It's also not accurate, because honesty isn't just, it's not like there's a toggle, right? there's a surprising amount of gradient within telling the truth to someone or being honest with someone. And yeah, that's the kind of thing where that should probably be addressed, especially since, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about this. The part of the episode that pisses me off the most is the ending, which absolutely gets a wah-wah, by the way. Go ahead and add that to the list here. Because the final bit with the wah-wah is, wow. You know, Twilight, I'd say she tears Spike a new one, but honestly, she's actually really lenient with Spike. All she does is tell him that it's been a long, hard day fixing his mess, and his response is, man, you look terrible. That's not being honest, as far as I'm concerned. That's being a dick. So he eats the book, which doesn't work, which makes sense. Because the book no longer has the curse. The curse has moved from the book to her. And, I'm with it. I'm looking at my notes here. I just have to give praise. As much as I am coming down on this episode, it's worth noting that, oh yeah, Cadence and Celeste, or no, it was Cadence and Luna. Lord Hermon. I do have to give special praise. Tabitha St. Germain is really, really doing a good job with this episode. I know I've been, you know, down on it, but man, she is absolutely nailing it this episode. Holy crap, she's fantastic. And her bit where she has to hit all of Equestria with my creative genius. Like, she just nails that part. It's beautiful. Anyways, so she makes the crystalline tree, and then he breaks the curse. You literally see the curse leave her, and she has no memory of anything that happened. Which, again, goes back to my point about the difference between curse rarity and real rarity. Kinda hurts the narrative a bit that there's a separate thing, but, you know, whatever. The animation's fantastic. I love the brickwork. I love the attention to detail. The very first part of this episode, which just has Pinky wandering through town for the upcoming festival, has beautiful animation and detail and quality in the background. I cannot begin to gush about it enough. The only way I can really showcase it properly is to just be like, look, and then look at that, and then look at that, and then look at that. No, I'm just dry. I haven't had water on my table for like 2 hours. Like, since we were still talking with Lore Reloaded. Yeah, they really like their festivals here, don't they? Yeah, I would rather have Rarity Crush than Jerk Spike. I agree completely. So, curse is breaking, it goes away. Wah, wah, I'm a dick. Let's go ahead, and by I mean Spike. Let's go ahead and read what Spike had to say about this, shall we? That's the Equestria games. That's the next one. Is there seriously no entry for this? I think there's no entry for this. I agree, Baron. There is no entry. Okay. Well then, I guess that's that then. Wow, that is the first episode we've had in season 4 that has not had an entry. Possibly the only. In fact, I know that's the only one, because next we have Equestria Games, and after that we have the two-parter, which is right here, where they talk about, you know, the stuff that changes and happens. There's a big entry by Pinky. And there's this one by Spike. Wait, what? Oh my god, here it is. I found it. Why is this over here? Okay, whatever. Hang on. Found it. It's really out of place. From Spike. I would do absolutely anything for Rarity. I mean, she called me her favorite dragon. And when she said I was one of her dearest and most supportive friends, I just had to find a way to help her when that puppeteer Claude was such a Claude. I had to help her get her creative spirit back. The inspiration manifestation spell sure did the trick, but it didn't really help Rarity, and I was too afraid of hurting our friendship to tell her. Today I learned how important it is to be honest with your friends when they're doing something you don't think is right. A true friend knows that you're speaking up because you care about them. That is real. Look at that. That is, how many pages is that? That's a full 10 pages after the Equestria Games entry. What the heck? What is... Sorry. Just... yeah. Anyways. Moving on. Let's go ahead and chop off. No, we're not done yet. We need to rate this episode. Where's the spreadsheet? There it is. So, what are you thinking, guys? This is definitely not purple. This is definitely not red. I mean, Tabitha St. Germain is really good in this episode, but Spike is irritating and dumb, and I hate the ending, and... honestly, I'm kind of leaning towards an average, and it entirely bolstered by her, and how they present her and what they do with her. So I'm kind of leaning towards average here. I don't know. Yes, this is a pretty skippable episode, I would agree. Yeah, you know what? I'm okay with below average. We'll go ahead and make it a green. That means 2 Corey Powell episodes have been green now. And 2 Megan McCarthy episodes. The difference is she has 5 reds. Anywho, next episode is... the Equestria Games. This should be interesting. So I'll be back in slightly less time. I did some paperwork last time, but I'll be back in about 25 minutes for Equestria Games.